We want to look at food security. We need to feed ourselves. Some believe that if somehow a boat doesn't come 1 week, we can find ourselves in a bit of mayhem. How do we look at caloric count and ensure that what we provide for ourselves, by the time we turn off the tap, is it that, Mr. Blanchard, Dr. Blanchard? Yes? By the time we turn off the pipe, we are able to lock off the pipe, sorry. We are able to sustain ourselves in a healthy way. And also, our economy since 2005 and the closure of the sugar industry has been pivoted towards services economy built on tourism services. How do we ensure that that is sustainable, that that grows to a significant way, that we are building and promoting our culture in such a way? And so we want to hear from Dr. David Baker on this matter. Manufacturing. I am trying to see. We want to invite Mr. Byron Jones, an expert in the tourism field, in manufacturing, to help us to have that understanding of how producing and working with our hands and building our work through our manufacturing sector. Because there was a time when it was said that Saint Kitts and Nevis manufacturing sector produced the combined total of what the other OECS and Barbados produce. Where are we today on that? How do we make that sustainably true in the future? And so we invite Mr. Byron Jones to have that conversation. And finally, we need to discuss how do we promote peace and security? Because we can have all the manufacturing in the world, we can want all the tourism in the world. If there's no peace and security, we can undercut that sustainability. And so our security expert, the advisor in the Prime Minister's office for national security, Dr. Lionel Rollins, will be able to share with us that understanding of how do we build sustainability into our discussion for a sustainability into our national security agenda. And so I want now to introduce the host for this panel, Mr. Dave Browne, who is in his right an innovator. And he has that understanding of how we can bring all this together, discussion for sustainability. So let us put our hands together and welcome to the lectern, Mr. Dave Browne.
Thank you, Larry, if that's comfortable for you. We're heading into the last session here, so we'll waste no time. We'll head straight into it. But one of the things I want to do is have everybody get a bibliography of each of these persons, well qualified, etc. So I have 4 persons in the audience, and in expressing our actual length in terms of our computer relations, I have my daughter in Spain who would also read one of those today. All right? So just begged me a while ago to get her first so that she can go to bed. So with respect to that, we have the 4, and can we get that up, please? The 4 speakers today. People doing the introductions, please come along. Introductions. So we're going to start first with my daughter, as I said. You can see her, you see those sleepy eyes, right? So she's going to introduce Dr. Cannonier. They're all in the sports division. Cricketers, you know, from here in St. Kitts. And she's a footballer over in Spain. So we'll have that first introduction. Go ahead, Felicia.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can all hear me. All okay? Okay. I hope the sessions are going well so far. As a fellow athlete and ambassador of Saint Kitts and Nevis, it is my honor to introduce Dr. Colin Cannonier. Dr. Colin Cannonier obtained a PhD in economics at Louisiana State University and is currently an associate professor at Belmont University and a fellow at the Global Labor Organization. He began his career working as a country economist in the Eastern Caribbean. As an applied economist, his current research focuses on education, health, and labor, as well as how they intersect with public policy issues influencing individual well-being that extends to economic growth and development. He is co-editor of a book, Contemporary Issues Within Caribbean Economies. His scholarly work has been published in notable journals such as the American Economic Review, Economics of Education Review, Review of Economics of the Household, and Journal of Demographic Economics. He has presented his research at numerous conferences, such as the American Economic Association.
Right. We'll get this fixed. So what I'll do, I'll call on our thing to come up and Dr. Rollins.
Dr. On Collins. Okay. Dr. Lionel von Frederick Collins, past Vice President of Safety and Security Management at the American of Nigeria. Also the Directors General of the Center for Conflict Analysis, Early Warnings and Peace Building, as well as professor and technograph. He was also Director General for the Center for Disaster Management and Humanitarian Assistance and the United States Marine. He has worked experience in South and Central America, the Far East, Near East, the Middle East, Europe, Iraq, Afghanistan, and Africa. Dr. Rollins has also served as a Democrat Committee member and designate chair, supervising many doctoral candidates to their terminal degree. He has been professionally involved in conflict resolution and peace building as a mediator, negotiator, facilitator, trainer, executive and conflict coach, dispute systems designer, and researcher. He has consulted for private, civic, military, regional, and community organizations. Dr. Rollins has been interviewed on radio and television regarding international conflict and national security issues, having his own radio and TV show in Africa. Part of Dr. Rollins' research and outreach responsibilities was in the area of crime, violence, and terrorism, human security, national security, strategic policy, and security, U.S. interest in an era of persistence, irregularity, and hybrid conflict. He has conducted high-impact policy relating studies regarding the statistic environment, its principles, strategy, challenges, and the relative balances of natural security ends, ways, and means to contend with them. He was also investigated ways of merging designs and conflict analysis to achieve a multi-dimensional understanding of conflict. Dr. Rollins is currently conducting researches in North Africa, and South on conflict analysis, early warnings, and peace building. This research is based on communication, planning, and coordinating among international nationals and local
Power up your
non-military
career.
actors
Join us in
and
Saint
military
Kitts from
leaders
October
before,
28 to
during,
November 1
and
for the
post-crisis
electric vehicle repair
to
and
facilitate the
maintenance training and certification.
mutual
Hosted at the
effectiveness
Center for
and
Research,
efficiency
Innovation, and
of
Workforce
each.
Training. This
His
hands-on
research
course
and
equips you
cumulative
with the
work
skills to service
resulted in
and
his
repair
appointment
electric vehicles.
in the
Learn
position
from
of
industry
Director
experts,
General
get
for
certified,
conflict
and connect
analysis.
with professionals from across
Ladies
the
and gentlemen,
Caribbean.
help
Whether
me
you're a mechanic
to
or a
bring
first
on stage
responder,
none
don't
other
miss
than
this chance to
Dr.
stay ahead
Lionel
in the
von
automotive
Frederick
industry.
Rollins.
Register at greensolutionsskn.com. Green Solutions International, locally rooted, globally connected.
They're going to use the same mic. Run.
Professor David MacArthur Baker,
Power up your career.
Specialist of
Join us in
Hospitality
Saint
and
Kitts from
Tourism
October 28
Management
to November 1
in
for
the College of
electric
Business
vehicle
at
repair
Tennessee
and
State
maintenance
University,
training and
Nashville,
certification.
and has been
Hosted
there
at
for
the
28
Center for Research,
years.
Innovation, and
Dr.
Workforce
Baker
Training.
does
This
consulting
hands-on
work in
course
the
equips
tourism
you with the
field,
skills to
mainly in
service
Southeast
and repair
Asia,
electric
the
vehicles.
Bahamas, and
Learn
the
from industry
USA.
experts.
Before assuming his current position, he worked as an associate professor and assistant professor of hospitality management at the University of Central Missouri and Eastern Illinois University, and as a resort manager of the Frigate Bay Beach Resort here in the Federation of Saint Kitts. In the USA, he has done consultancy work with the Kansas City Convention and Visitors Bureau, the Fairmont Hotel, Kansas City, and the Hyatt Regency Crown Center, Kansas City. As a researcher, his interests include cruise ship tourism, island sustainability tourism development, destination marketing and teaching and learning. He has published over 35 articles in leading tourism research journals, book chapters, and is a reviewer for several journals. One of his journal articles has more than 116,000 downloads, a mark of distinction. Dr. Baker holds a PhD in workforce education and development, hospitality and tourism concentration from Southern Illinois University, Carbondale, USA, a master's in hotel and food service management from Florida International University, Miami, and a Bachelor of Science in hotel management from the University of the West Indies.
Earlier this morning, during the health panel, Dr. Blanchard used a phrase. He said, "Lock off the pipe." Well, I think the biography of Mr. Jones warrants the West Indian expression, all-rounder. Here we go. Byron Jones is a founding member and CEO for Atlantic Development Consulting, LLC. ADC is a development consulting firm, and its sole focus is the manufactured steel module home market. ADC focuses on affordable multifamily housing to meet the growing need for quality and affordable living. ADC is currently active in the development of multifamily housing in Palm Beach County, Florida, dormitory living for a university in Alabama, and the development of housing for a market-rate marina in the Caribbean islands. Previously, Byron led the finance function for the transformation and integration team for Keurig Dr. Pepper, KDP. This team was formed to drive integration and lead initiatives for KDP after the merger of Keurig Green Mountain and Dr. Pepper. KDP had committed to synergy savings of $600 million per annum and investing $1.5 billion in strategy implementation projects. His area of responsibility also included corporate real estate, which included a portfolio of manufacturing and administrative facilities. While at KDP, Byron's team led the development of new corporate headquarters located in Frisco, Texas. Prior to joining KDP, Byron was appointed Chief Financial Officer of the University of Phoenix in 2013, after joining Apollo Education Group in 2012. Byron leads the finance functions for the university, working closely with the University of Phoenix executive leaders to provide clear oversight of financial operations, an area that is essential to the university's success. Byron has extensive experience in building and transforming teams during periods of change and as a member of the university president's cabinet. Byron has more than 30 years of experience in corporate and divisional finance industry, spanning from airlines to technology. Byron served in various financial leadership roles across Fortune 500 companies in a range of industries. The Chief Financial Officer at Coda Automotive, as well as Vice President of Corporate Finance at HD Supply, the former wholesale distribution arm of Home Depot, where he built the department from the ground up. He held finance leadership roles at Delta Airlines, Ascendant Corporation, and Ryder Corporation. Byron has actively created strategic partnerships with Thurgood Marshall College Fund, U.S. Black Chamber of Commerce, and other corporate clients. He served on the boards of the Boys and Girls Club of Metro Phoenix and Phoenix Aviation Board. Dedicated to addressing access to education and has been recognized by STEM Connector as a top 100 diverse corporate leader in STEM, and in 2014, the Leadership Excellence Award from the National Diversity Council. Byron earned his MBA from the Darden School and at the University of Virginia, and his bachelor's degree in accounting from Tuskegee University. Byron currently serves as a trustee on the Board of Trustees for Tuskegee University and the TED Center. TED Center is a technology enterprise and development nonprofit headquartered in Delray Beach, Florida. And if that is not an all-rounder, I don't know what is.
All right, so let's take one more shot back to Spain with Phoenicia introducing Mr. Cannonier.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can we hear me? Yes. Yes. I hope the sessions are going well so far. He is co-editor of a book, Contemporary Issues Within Caribbean Economies. His scholarly work has been published in notable journals such as the American Economic Review, Economics of Education Review, Review of Economics of the Household, and Journal of Demographic Economics. He has presented his research at numerous conferences such as the American Economic Association, the Southern Economic Association, European Economic Association, European Society for Population Economics, the National Bureau of Economic Research Summer Institute, the London School of Economics, the Paris School of Economics, the International Labor Organization, and various central banks. Dr. Cannonier's research has also been featured in popular outlets such as the Harvard Business Review and UNESCO. He serves as an institutional liaison on the Committee of the Status of Women in the Economics Profession and is a mentor through the American Economic Association Mentoring Pipeline Program. In September 2019, he delivered the feature address at the Government of Saint Kitts and Nevis Annual Prime Minister's Independence Lecture Series. Dr. Cannonier has had the honor of representing his native country in 2 sports, cricket and football. He is the recipient of a Fulbright Scholarship, further distinguishing his contributions to bridging cultural and intellectual gaps across global communities. Please welcome Dr. Cannonier.
Thank you, babe. So it's just left for me alone, and all I'll say, I'm Dave Browne. I did computer science as my bachelor's and GIS as my master's. I'm sitting with these fine gentlemen, and we'll start the discussion right away. So I'm going to call right now on Dr. Rollins to do his first presentation.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I used to be good looking at one time, young and handsome. Let me begin where Ambassador Vaughan left off by saying, without security, there could be no peace. There's no peace, there can be no development. There's no development, there can be no security. So it is one vicious cycle. No matter what you have, no matter what you got, no matter what you think, there is no security, you have nothing. So let me begin by saying that this topic today, speaking about the diaspora and national security, is a new topic. It is very new. In the past, people spoke mostly about remittances. In the old days, when people traveled from the islands, not just Saint Kitts, but the islands, where did they go to? They went to the UK, the US, Canada. And when they got there, things were tough. Some of you can probably imagine your grandparents traveling away in the 40s and 50s. It was tough. But the only thing that they considered back then was to be able to send some money back to the islands. Call it remittances. But since then, things have taken a rather drastic turn because now we have crime, violence, and terrorism. So today I'm going to show you the good part and the bad part of the diaspora and how it affects national security. There are some good parts, but there are some bad parts. So, you can look up there, and if you can read it, you will see. I want to use this definition that you see there. If you look up what diaspora means, it has different meanings. There's about maybe 15 or 20 different definitions. But for our group today, it is a large group of people who may share national or regional origin. Saint Kitts, Nevis, or Caribbean. So you can be a Saint Kitts or Nevis person in the diaspora, or can be from the Caribbean. Somebody from the Caribbean in the diaspora. However, the diasporic populations, they are often outnumbered wherever you go. So they tend to gravitate together because that is where you get your security from. Hence, when you go to a country and they say, you notice there's a Chinatown? Because when those people came there, they were ostracized, they were marginalized, so they had to come together. Why do we have Japan town, Indian town, Pakistani town, Hmong town, now Vietnam town? So these are all the reasons why we have these different towns. So wherever you go to a Chinatown, you'll remember that. Beside the remittances, there are the foreign direct investment, businesses, entrepreneurship. We will not touch much in that because today we had a wonderful presentation about wealth and wealth creation, and that included trade, investment, and all of that. So I will not touch much about that. However, I want to say that the people in the diaspora exert a lot of political power and a lot of political influence. If you look at where the people are in the world, you are the people who make your country, your host country, and your country of origin, you make them turn. There are a lot of people in the diaspora who have assumed positions of power, political power. If you notice in the United States, there are a lot of Mexicans who are in the legislature, a lot of Mexicans who are in Congress, who are in the Senate, and maybe one day we may get a Mexican president of the United States. We need to pull our people together and make sure that one day one of us can go up there and become a governor of a state. But they exert a lot of political power, and when they do that, they bring power to their country of origin. Because once you are engaging in that political power, you can influence what happens in your country. One time there was, in Africa, in Nigeria, there was a terrorist group called Boko Haram. I don't know if you all heard about them, but they were killing a lot of people. They abducted children, young girls, and so forth. And one time, some bridges were knocked out and people were cut off from one part of the village. They couldn't go into the cities. If you couldn't go into the cities, you would die at some point. You can't see a doctor, you can't visit a hospital. Government was kind of reluctant to put any money to build bridges. So a group of us reached out to, there's this group they call NIDO, the Nigerian in the diaspora. And they were able to put up a lot of money to go out there and to build these bridges. That power. And because they did that, they were able to influence the elections that followed henceforth. We here in Saint Kitts and Nevis should pay more attention to what these people are doing. If they can do it, we can do it. People in the diaspora, you see it says ethnic, national, religious, and racial groups. It is no longer now that I am from Saint Kitts and Nevis that we are in this group. Religion has now taken over. I will explain that a little bit more. If countries that have an Islamic majority, they are now taken over. The state of Minnesota, for example, in the United States, Islam has played a fantastic role. Their senators and their congresswomen, they are all Islam. There's a lot of Islam there who vote, and they put them in power, and they can take them out of power. They're not going to take their own people out of power. We need to take a page from these people and figure it out. However, what I want to come to is we have some threats and some assets based on national security and the diaspora. I'm going to put it up, and then I'm going to show it to you later. So some threats is Some people have loyalties to their host country and some to their country of origin. But if you have loyalty only to your country of origin, then you have no respect for your host country. For example, in the United States, there are a lot of people who live in America, but you hate the country. The only thing that comes to mind is to blow up people in stadiums or to blow up people in train tunnels in the UK and all of these things. These are people, the US citizens or British citizens, who live there, but they don't really like the country. For whatever reasons. And some reasons are legitimate and some may not be. But we also have the developed non-state networks that are considered dangerous. They create financial lifelines that raise funds to procure weapons. We have a problem here with crime. Some of these weapons are coming into the country from our people in the diaspora. Coming in from our people in the diaspora, come here and to hurt and harm our people. So it's not all good and bad. Sometimes we have to take the bull by the horns. But if you're going to speak about an asset, we are strategically vital political assets. As mentioned, we contribute through remittances, money. We provide access to local knowledge. We increase legitimacy of our country, and we promote bilateral relationships. Now, let me explain some of that. When the Prime Minister was here this morning, he spoke about people living abroad who are able to reach out and contact our people here. This came about when the advent of the internet, around the time when the Cold War disintegrated. People started to use the internet to bring them closer. If you remember, before the internet and before we had the computer, how did we communicate? We wrote letters. A letter took a week or two to get here. You had to respond on a week or two. Or if you were fortunate enough to have a phone in your house, you can make phone calls and the costs were astronomical. So we are now able to use internet and technology to stay in touch with our people abroad and overseas. And they too can do the same. It's like that man is, wherever he is, he's calling his family members in Africa to make sure that things are okay. What do you need? What can I send you? The other part of it, again, we spoke about remittances. Now let me ask a question. Which country in the world think make the most money from their people in diaspora? Oh, which one? The Philippines? Mexico? One more. Nigeria? You're all close, but no cigar. The one country, one more try. Who is that? India. India makes $130 billion a year, US. Mexico, though, next. You weren't too far off. Philippines is after, and Pakistan. Nigeria makes about Nigeria is about 21 billion. Nigeria is not up there, but 21 billion for a country, 300 million people. A lot of money. Jamaica just have about, I think, 1 or 2 billion. Not a dent. We need to be able to get that up. Can you imagine Saint Kitts getting an influx of just $1 billion? 10% of the GDP of some countries, 10%. We will never make 120 billion. India is able to do that only because of the size of their population and the amount of people they have abroad. We spoke about political and social influence. A great deal has been written about remittances. So again, I'm not going to speak about remittances, but I will tell you a lot of the money that has been used and sent has been used to fund terrorism, crime, and violence. I will show you now an example. It's the Tamil guerrillas. By the way, the Tamil guerrillas are Sri Lanka. This is a contingent of the female forces, which is practically all females. These are some of the fiercest fighters and warriors in the world, led by women and women only. Don't mess with those people. I had a privilege to train with them. They're not easy people. They're fighting for something that they think is worthy to them. And when somebody fights passionately, they tend to win. But what they were doing was, there are people who are living in Canada who are sending home money to their people in Sri Lanka. They would say to them, if you send money to your parents, you must send money to us as well. If you don't send money to us, we'll destroy your family. They operated like the mafia. So can you imagine a gang here in Saint Kitts is telling you, anytime your family members send you money, to get our share. If we don't get our share, we're going to kill you. We don't want to ever get to that point. And this is still going on, not just in Sri Lanka, but in a lot of countries, especially a lot of African countries, where there's a lot of corruption and the government has lost control of it. We, as people in the diaspora, we affect foreign policy. Foreign policy is affected. The people in the diaspora, in big countries, they make sure they go to countries, to their government, and ensure that their concerns are met. They also are concerned about what's going on in their original country, and so they make it their business and reach out with the government of their original countries. That is why you who live in the UK, the US, Canada, every time the election comes around, somebody posts one of the prime ministers, the old one, the new one, or one who wants to be. Why do they do that? Because you are important to them. And your concerns are their concerns. When you raise concerns, they have to work with it. They disseminate this information. Something to think about. During the Iraq War, before the Iraq War started, everyone said Iraq had nuclear weapons. I was sent to Iraq. I spent 2 years in Iraq, the first 2 years, without coming home. Because in the first 2 years, it was an intense battle. For those of you who remembered, it was intense. But why did we go to war? Because the Iraqis who were living in the United States told the United States government that Saddam Hussein had nuclear weapons. None of us ever saw it. None of us knew. But the people who lived there told the United States government Saddam Hussein has nuclear weapons. So we went there on a whim, thinking that we would find nuclear weapons. The war raged for a very long time. Thousands of people killed. Found nothing. So, as it says there, relying on expatriates for intelligence information is a risky business. Do not rely on information that you do not know about. People will say what they want to say for political reasons. Here is a good one. Brain drain. What is interesting is that it says half of foreign students who go to school, to graduate school that is, PhD, masters, when they go there, they don't come back. Half. Half of the students who go there don't come back. And why would they? They would say, I have a PhD, why would I go back to Montserrat? Do what? This is the idea and the feeling of people. What we need to do is bring our people home. We should be able to do that. We have Psyche Southwell over there. What if we brought people like that home? I heard that she's this great technologist. All of you probably heard the same thing. What if we were to bring her home? What if we were to bring people like the good old doctor there? What about these people on the stage? What if we were supposed to? What if we brought them home? Sandri, I'm going to start a cybersecurity unit because throughout the Caribbean, cybersecurity is dangerous. The entire Caribbean, very little is known about cybersecurity. Instead of bringing a man from Germany or France or Norway, Sandrine, where is she? Supposed to be here somewhere. I asked her if she would come and join us and help establish a cybersecurity system. The people who are highly qualified. I know the government cannot pay you, Psyche, the money you probably make. I was in the American University of Nigeria. I was there for 15 years. I was one of 3 vice presidents, the senior one. When the president left, I took over, I ran the university. I was paid very, very well. I took a cut. When the prime minister asked me to come back, I did. You get tapped on the shoulder, you need to come back. Look at this is a nice depiction of a picture of the brain, but look, all the countries who are benefiting. These are people who have left their country and went there to the US, the UK, Norway, Sweden, Germany, France, and they're putting out their information there. We need to bring you home. But if we're going to bring you home, we need to have something for you. We cannot just bring you and have you languish somewhere. These are things that we are trying to get to work with to improve so we can get our people. And finally, what we are speaking about there is how all of these other countries, all of these people you see there, you probably cannot see it well, they are Africans from all over Africa who are in the EU, who are in the US, the UK, but they are working in the United Nations, in high probable positions that we can't even imagine. These people are in the World Bank, they're in the IMF, they're all over the world. This is where we all have our people there too. We just need to send more. Because once you get there, you become very, very influential. And finally, conclusion, we have some very fine lectures waiting here for you, so we don't want to take up too much time. Speak about religion. The religion is emerging as one of the core principles that people look for in the diaspora. I mentioned the Islam. Just now when Ambassador Vaughan speak about Lebanon, we do have a lot of Lebanese, but they're mostly Christian. We have the Iranians. Saint Kitts and Nevis should investigate how best to utilize diaspora groups because we need to influence our policy abroad. We want to get a sustainable island state. We need to create wealth at home, influence job creation, recruit our talented people abroad and bring them home. And we got to do it safely, all in keeping with our national security intact and uncompromised. Thank you very much. I did my 15 minutes and I was able to do it well.
Good afternoon. I first want to thank the organizers of this Diaspora conference for the opportunity to be here. I also want to thank you, the audience, for being here. You could have, and those of you who are also in video land, you could have spent your holidays doing a bunch of other things, chose to stay. So thank you for that. So this is some work on role of remittances and how that impacts food insecurity. And we wanted to examine that relationship during times of crisis. So just to be quick, so I'm going to try to address 3 key questions, and then I'll speak a little bit about food security and remittances. Speak about some data that we use to try to address some of these questions. The method that we use, some results, and then we'll conclude with some policy implications. So the key questions that we're trying to answer, at least, one is whether there's a relationship between remittances and food security. The next question is essentially, what is this relationship like? Is it causal? Are we able to show that remittances are able to drive food security, in particular food insecurity, down? And then the last question that we're trying to answer is basically, what are the policy implications arising from these results? So I'll just speak a little bit about the definition of food security. I'm just going to use the definition from the Food and Agricultural Organization. So food security entails the ability to physically and economically acquire an adequate supply of safe and nourishing food that satisfies dietary requirements and personal food preferences. And in general, we're trying to enable individuals to live a healthy and active life. In terms of what does it mean to be food insecure, I'm going to go with the FAO definition as well. Someone is considered to be food insecure when you lack the necessary regular access to enough safe and nutritious food for normal growth and development and active, healthy lifestyle. All right? And so this may be due to just not having access to food or just not having the available resources to access healthy food. Food insecurity has various levels, all right? I think at different points in time, some of us, many of you who may have been in college, would have experienced some form of food insecurity. And it can range from the whole idea of, it's very difficult to see, but wondering whether or not you will have something to eat, going down to as far as whether or not you actually went a whole day without having any food. So what is the state of food insecurity in the Caribbean like? So food insecurity is not only a Caribbean issue, not only a Saint Kitts and Nevis issue, it is an issue across the world. In fact, it is part of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals target, goal number 2, which is to eliminate hunger by 2030. Now, regrettably, UN did tell us that won't be possible to achieve that target in 2030, but nonetheless, food insecurity will play a very significant role in helping us to that target at some point in time. In the Caribbean, we've seen a steady increase in food insecurity. Dating back from 2014, we have seen it increase steadily. Got to a crescendo in about 2021, such that about 40% of the population in the Caribbean were considered to be food insecure. In Saint Kitts and Nevis, it's a little bit better, but not low enough. It's around 30%. Something that is important to note is that folks who tend to bear the brunt of food insecurity are women and children. So what are some of the factors that lead to food insecurity? So I'm just going to speak to one, and I think living in Saint Kitts and Nevis wouldn't be too surprising. What is the cost of being able to afford a healthy diet? Right? So the bar graphs that you're looking at is basically looking at the cost of a healthy diet by region. So the first bar is basically for the world, but I want you to focus on the two orange bars, in particular the second one from your right. And so that is the cost of a healthy diet for anyone who is in the Caribbean, and that's an average. And I think the number is about 4.23, yes, so it's about $4.23 US dollars. So that's equivalent to about $11 to $12 Eastern Caribbean dollars, which is sort of close to the minimum wage. Yeah? So this is the evolution of sort of the cost of a healthy diet, specifically for Saint Kitts and Nevis. So have some numbers here. From about 2017, the cost of a healthy diet for a person for a day was about $3.35 US. So the equivalent Eastern Caribbean dollars at a rate of about 2.7. In 2017, it was about $9, right, to be able to afford a healthy diet for a day. Now in 2022, it's about $12.37. I'm going to skip this chart here and get more into the information that I just provided. So I did mention that the cost of a healthy diet in the Caribbean is about $4.23, which is about $11, $12 Eastern Caribbean dollars. What this diagram is basically showing how long it takes an individual basically work, or at least how long someone will take to work to obtain a healthy diet for a week. So the scenarios that I'm showing there is a person who is working for minimum wage in Saint Kitts and Nevis, and then we're comparing that with an individual who's working for minimum wage in the United States. And someone who is working for minimum wage in Saint Kitts and Nevis, on average, will have to work about 8 hours, which is equivalent to a day, in order to obtain or purchase healthy food for a week. Someone in the United States working for minimum wage take half of that time. Now, you wonder, why should we care? Well, this is something that is non-trivial. If someone has to take a day to be able to make sufficient money to purchase or obtain healthy food, then you're spending a significant amount of your time just trying to be healthy, other than trying to actually make a living that would take you beyond a much more prosperous life. Some consequences of food insecurity: think of poor nutrition. You can think of distorted eating patterns. Either you're under nutrition or you're obese and overweight. We can think of physical hunger, and those things tend to manifest themselves in poor work outcomes, or poor academic outcomes, or even poor sports outcomes. And then another consequence, which many of us tend not to spend a lot of time on, is the whole idea of psychological hunger. And those things tend to manifest themselves in people tend to lose their dignity when they're food insecure. We tend to see violence take place. We tend to see a lot of risk-taking. Sometimes the increase in sexual behavior amongst teenagers are usually a function of some of these individuals being food insecure. And then you have these other coping mechanisms when some individuals are experiencing food insecurity, things like substance abuse and alcohol usage and so forth. So let's look at remittances. So I'm going to be very brief on remittances because that has been a sort of phrase that has been used fairly often. But remittances are basically goods and or money that individuals abroad send back home. And there are various channels through which remittances can actually get back home from those of us who are abroad. All right? One of the key things is that remittances tend to be used for food, education, medication, housing, and so forth. I'm going to click to this first and then talk about why we should care about remittances. So I know there have been some conversations about remittances in terms of the absolute amount being fairly low in the region, but I'm going to look at it from the standpoint in terms of how much remittances accounts, or at least what fraction of our total income is remittances. And so hopefully it's not too surprising, but remittances account for a higher fraction of our GDP, our total income, in the Caribbean than any other parts of the world. So although the numbers may be small, but in terms of the impact, it does have a larger impact in Caribbean states than any other parts of the world. And you can think of Asia, India, and Pakistan. Remittances, whatever comes in, does have a much larger impact. So I just want to link remittances to food security. So what is the relationship? So when you have more remittances, you're pretty much able to enhance an individual's ability to buy food, able to cope during times of food shocks, and then you can also increase people's diet when more remittances come in. Right? So what do we do next? So here. So we use some data, right? And so I wanted to see how does the data look in terms of seeing how remittances influence food insecurity. So we obtained some data that was collected by the Inter-American Development Bank and Cornell University. So they surveyed individuals in about 17 Latin American countries and the Caribbean, so about 200,000 individuals. When we basically consider the information that we need, got down to about 145,000 individuals. And the good thing about this survey is that it has some rich information on these demographic, the age, the education, and those type of things. It also has information on whether or not they receive remittances, and we also have some idea as to the food insecurity situation of each of these individuals. So some of the measures of food insecurity that we were able to capture from the data set were asking questions about whether or not these individuals were experiencing insufficient purchases, like whether or not you were able to buy all the items that you wanted. Another one was whether you or your family members' recent trip to the grocery store was more than 7 days a week. All right? Another one was hunger. Suffer from hunger because you just don't have access to any food. And then the last one was food availability. All right? You only had food up to about 3 days and not more. Those individuals were considered to be food insecure. And then based on all that information, we sort of created an overall index. So how did we go about doing this thing? I'm going to tell you briefly about the methods, right? All of the noise is somewhere in the background, but it's a sort of matching approach. So what we did with these 145,000 individuals, basically separated them into two groups. Those who said that they received remittances and those who said that they did not receive remittances. And so we were only matching individuals in the remittance group with those who are very similar to them in the non-remittance group. So anyone who is different, they're not taken into consideration. And so the idea is that if we can match individuals on their personal and other observable characteristics, and then when we compare the food insecurity outcome between those in the receiving remittance group and those in the non-remittance receiving group, if we find any difference in the food insecurity outcomes, then we can fairly comfortably attribute those change in outcomes to one group receiving remittances and the other group not receiving remittances, because all of the other characteristics in which they are similar and that we can observe, we've already matched them, right? And so what we did when we look at the data and we did this matching and look at compare the food insecurity situation in those who received remittances and those who did not receive remittances, we found some results that were pretty interesting and consistent with what we were looking for. So specifically, we found that those people who received remittances, they were 3% less likely to have made insufficient purchases. Within the context of grocery trips, those who received remittances, they were 7.6% less likely to go more than 7 days without going to the grocery, right? In terms of hunger, people who receive remittances were less likely to indicate that they suffered from hunger because they didn't have access to any food. And the last one, in terms of food availability, people who receive remittances, they were less likely to say that they only had food up to 3 days, right? And so overall, we found that those families and those individuals who receive remittances were about 9% less likely to experience food insecurity. So the last thing I did was basically, I thought I would utilize the data from different sources to sort of extrapolate what it might cost us in Saint Kitts and Nevis, sort of eliminate food insecurity among those who experience insecurity. So these are just some estimates, all right? So use the total population for 2022, that was about 48,000 individuals. We know that about 11% of the population receive remittances. In terms of the number of individuals in the population who are considered to be food insecure, the FAO tells us it was about 30%. So 30% of our population is about 14,000. Of that 14,000 who are considered to be food insecure, we assume that about 9% or 9% of those are able to get out of food insecurity because they receive remittances. So that leaves us with about 13,539 individuals. And the key thing is that what would it cost us to be able to take those individuals out of food insecurity? Well, the average daily cost of a healthy diet is about $4.23 US. So to extrapolate that over a year, and that expenditure would be somewhere about $21 million US, or about 4 Eastern Caribbean dollars. How large is that? It represents about 2% of our GDP. Just something for you to think about. So just to conclude, so remittances do have a reducing impact on food insecurity. We're not saying that remittances will address the food insecurity issue. It won't. But what we know is that the more monies that is sent from folks out in the US, for sure, back home, that can make a big dent on food insecurity. So I'm going to talk about 2 policy implications and then I'm done. So one policy implication has to do with the flow of remittances, and the other one has to do with how we can help address food insecurity issues. So the first has to do with is if there's a way in which we can improve the flow of remittances. So I think about 3 policy areas. One would be, is there a way we can streamline the regulations, right? Can we simplify the rules to cost of sending money back home? What about enhancing financial services or financial access? Can we increase banking services to make the flow from remittances a lot more tractable? And lastly, on this front, has to do with leveraging technology. Is it possible that we can utilize mobile banking and digital wallets at a much more higher level to sort of affect the flow of remittances? And then on the side, with respect to food insecurity, how can we increase access to healthy food? Can we implement subsidies to make healthier foods cheaper for the more vulnerable in society? How about supporting our local agriculture? And lastly is the whole idea of education. How can we promote nutrition education? Several times since I've been here, I would go to the buffet, and I do enjoy eating, and I will just observe the plates. As economists, we like to observe a lot. And so when I look at the plates, large instances, some of the food, even though it's free to some extent and available, you'll be surprised to see the composition of the food items. There are lots of fruits and vegetables are available, but very few people go to that section, right? So just something to think about when it comes to educating ourselves. So I just want to end here basically that the results, we think the results are relevant because remittances can help to improve the well-being of individuals. It's important that policymakers not just take the role or the impact of remittances on food insecurity just for the overall impact, because there are a lot of other spin-offs as a result of that. And strategies suggested are very crucial if you want to improve well-being of individuals. So I'm going to stop here and say thank you very much for listening.
Good afternoon to everyone. I'm not going to too long on introduction. Thanks for inviting me. I appreciate it. Thanks to all of you who are attending, those of you online. I'm talking about sustainable tourism development. So I'm just going to go straight into what does sustainable tourism development mean? That is the first thing we need to address. Well, we know what is sustainability. We're looking at in what we have for the future and for a very long time. In this case, though, we are talking about tourism. And I think we in Saint Kitts and Nevis years have recognized the increasing importance of tourism. The big question is, how do we make it sustainable? How do we get tourism to be with us and is a major part of the economy for many years to come? That's what I intend to address this afternoon. So we are developing tourism, and we are putting in certain guidelines and steps so that tourism that is bringing us a large amount of money does not destroy the environment, the culture, or indeed some parts of the economy. So we are not going to sacrifice what we have in order to develop this tourism that everybody over the last 20 years have become very interested in. When I say everybody here, I'm referencing countries. You would not believe it, but Saudi Arabia is developing significantly their tourism industry because they realize they can't just keep relying on oil and gas. The UAE, United Arab Emirates, is doing the same thing. And there are many other countries that have realized and recognized the importance of developing the tourism economy. So that's basically what sustainable tourism development is about. Now we have had the pandemic and nobody could travel, many countries shut down. And so that was a severe impact on tourism and travel. But I'm pleased to tell you that the latest reports from the IMF and the World Tourism Organization, we are now 97% back as what we have in travel before the pandemic. So we are basically back. Tourism is back. And if you read some of the business reports, you realize Boeing and Airbus can't keep up with the orders for airplanes. So people are traveling again. So how do we take advantage of that here in the Caribbean and in Saint Kitts and Nevis in particular? And how do we do that in a sustainable way? And I want to go now straight to the meat of, why do I say meat? Because, hospitality does involve nice food, as Colin said. So I want to look at the impacts. Here on this slide, I have identified 3 major impacts of tourism: economic impact, socio-cultural impact, and environmental impact. And that's the focus of my discussion here. From this slide, I want you to take a look, first of all, at economic impact. And I'm going to use a simple example of borrowing $1 from my wallet, and I'm going to not give it. I'm going to give it to the economy of Saint Kitts and Nevis. Because that is exactly what tourism does. Imagine this room as Saint Kitts and Nevis. And tourists come to Saint Kitts and Nevis. What do they must have? Money. It's an economic impact. We have to measure how much money comes into the economy as a result of tourism. And just for my simple example, I'm going to call this $1 billion. Now, we're talking about impacts. What happened to $1 billion in a year that comes into this nation from tourism? Well, simple. The tourists have to stay in hotels. Aren't we staying in hotels here? There's a bill to be paid. Where is that money coming from? Some of this dollars. We eat. We have to pay for food and beverages. And we do tours. And we engage in a number of different things. Again, it is some of this $1 billion. And it go on and on. So what's the impact? It's economic. Additionally, as a result of spending the money on the nation, in the country, people work in these hotels. They have to be paid. Is everybody with me? That was a question. They have to be paid. So they are paid out of the $1 billion. Then what do they do with their money? They have to pay their rent. They have to pay their mortgages. They have to pay their car notes. They have to put gas in the car. They have to pay for their kids in college, and the list go on and on and on. What are we talking about? Economic impacts of tourism. So people also have jobs. What we want to see in terms of sustainability is more people from the country having managerial jobs in those hotels, and not just low-level, unskilled labor. Then another thing we can talk about from an economic sense is the more money that comes in from tourism, it goes into the balance of trade. Why is that so? Because tourism is an export. And Colin, I'm sure, as an economist, would back me up on this. Tourism is an export. Whenever we export something, that's good for the country. So there goes another impact of tourism. And we have to manage it well so that our exports would be a lot more than what we import, which is a negative impact, than what we import to support the tourism economy. Another thing that we want to talk about in terms of economic impact, and I'm not going to go through all of them, obviously I don't have the time, but another important one that needs mention here is economic linkages. And I've traveled a bit, And here is a great deficiency where we are not linking agriculture as much as we should with tourism. We have to get the hotels and the restaurants to use products from the farmers in the countries that have tourism. So there is that linkage. Tomatoes, herbs and thyme, carrots, and the list go on and on. These things can be grown right in the country and sold to tourism. Again, another way of being sustainable, keeping the farmers employed, keeping jobs, and here we go with another example of economic impact. Secondly, we can go into the socio-cultural impact. And we don't have to go very far, because just across the room here, I think you see the arts and craft and different items that people have made, right? Right across the room right here. That's socio-cultural. The tourists are going to purchase those items. The tourists are going to be educated about how some of these products are made. That's sustainability again, because you are employed. Those people will be employed producing those items for years. That's sustainability, connecting our culture, our way of life, tourism, socio-cultural impact. Our dance, our music, our foods, our way of life, telling some of the stories to tourists. Again, socio-cultural impacts. And to talk about sustainability, another thing we have to understand, if you could see clearly on the board here, I have a positive and a negative sign. Do you realize that? So some of them are negative. We want to eliminate those as much as possible. And the ones that are positive, we want to focus on those and accentuate those as much as possible. That's what we mean when we're talking about sustainable tourism development. Then thirdly, we have, sadly, this one is real serious, environmental impacts. And this have gone on for many years, where we have the development of tourism, and we basically destroy the environment. We mess up the beaches, we cut down the forests, we don't take care of waste properly. We have all kind of problems with electricity, because we don't have enough electricity for the locals, more or less to be put in hotels and restaurants and all kind of facilities that have higher demand for electricity. And so, in some countries, I'm not going to call any name, because they may not invite me back. In some countries like St. Thomas, I hope the ambassador for St. Thomas is not here. You could be in your hotel and not have electricity for hours. The water system is terrible. I hope nobody is here from the Bahamas, but the Bahamas got some real problems with water. It smells awful. You can't drink it. And then, of course, the stench from the sewage system that they can't manage properly. I mean, it's terrible. We have been in tourism not managing the environmental impacts as well as we have done with the economic part and the socio-cultural part. So we need to pay some more attention and be more serious about how we can take better care of the environment. I would conclude, because, again, we are pressed for time here, and I think I have explained fairly well how we can have sustainable tourism development. I would go to my conclusion, and, I have some things here about the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and I have a number of different sentences or statements as to how they can be achieved. One of them, I'm just going to comment on one of them because I don't want to say I found it funny, but I found it one that cannot be attained, like eliminate poverty. That's not possible. The Bible said the poor you have with you always. It's not a real problem to try and get to zero. It's not going to happen. Just my personal opinion. In summary, here's what we got. For sustainability to really happen in terms of a tourism sense, we've got to do a lot more research. I was encouraged to hear that you're planning to have this conference again in 3 years. Summon some of us to do some research. So when we get back here in 3 years, we say, okay, these are some of the research projects we have had, and here are the results, and then we can take those results and get some activities and implement something from actual research that we have done in this country. Another thing is we talk about the government goal in terms of policy, in terms of legislation. Can't have people just going in the ocean and breaking off the coral reefs anymore. And overfishing, and a lot of other things that, tourists seem to do. We have to implement education. Before they go up to Mount Liamiga, they have to have a 10-minute session on explaining the importance of taking care of, not throwing out garbage and not doing this and not doing that. Before they go up there, before they go diving, they have to have a session to educate them as to how they should behave. I've been to a swimming with the dolphins in the Florida Keys. And before you get in there to swim with the dolphins and take photos, there's a 15 minutes educational session. So when you go into that environment, you behave a certain way. All these are some of the things that we need to do in order for us to have sustainable tourism development. And so I have some other statements on my slide over here. I'm sure it would be available to you after my session here. I thank you very much. I look forward to your questions afterwards.
All right, I'm the last person between the bar, I take it. First, I want to thank the organization for inviting me down to discuss manufacturing. Sorry, can you hear me? And also, thank you for sticking around to hear the last speaker of the day. What I want to do, because we're pressed for time, I want to start with the conclusion. And I want to center that conclusion on some of the speeches or some of the presentations that were made earlier today that I think is important to say. The one thing I want to bring up is something that Dr. Blanchard talked about earlier today, and that's around NCD. It's a true chronic issue, not only in St. Kitts, but also across the world and especially in the United States. What I would like to say is that one of the conclusions or one of the solutions that I will talk about is around how you can use hydroponic farming and the use of what we call steel containers to do it. An 8 by 40 foot container can give you 3 acres. Great for leafy greens. And so that, when we talked about food insecurity, it's amazing that a place as beautiful as this would not be producing enough food, not only to sustain its own people, but also the tourism as it swells here during those months. The other thing I want to bring up, when Dr. Martin talked about it, he said there were like 7 pillars of a community that is sustainable. And one of those is around shelter, housing. So we manufacture housing, and we manufacture that for the South Florida that is hurricane resistant for Miami-Dade codes. So I want to give you this now around the conclusions, because when I talk about some of the solutions, I want to at least draw it together to what we talked about today. The other thing the gentleman just talked about in tourism. How do you build sustainable tourism? You need more tourism, and I'd say bifurcate tourism between cruise ships that come in and the people that actually stay on the island. I surmise to you that the economics of the people stay on the island is much greater than the cruise ships cycling through on a daily basis. So what does that mean? Maybe need to build a few more. We'll put more people to work. It'll really increase economic dollars here on this island itself and really highlight the beauty of the island and bring people. So what I'd like to do now is that what I want to Economics. So economics right now, as you talked about, tourism is a big part of it. Education is another part of it. You have a university here, a medical university that people come down to go to the university. The question is, can manufacturing be a part of it? And let's talk about the significance of manufacturing. First, I'll talk about what we do. Let's see if it actually works here. When I think about Saint Kitts and Nevis, I think about all the other islands that surround Saint Kitts and Nevis that could also participate and benefit from what you may do here on this island. So we're not going to spend any time on this. Go back and read it. Who ADC, we align ourselves with not-for-profits and empower those folks to be able to develop for their economic development. I will say that we have partnered with a manufacturer that does what we call manufactured steel modular homes. They're completed in a plant, and we ship them to site. Doesn't mean that it circumvents a trade required at that site to make it happen. You got to have people who are properly trained to place modules down, build the infrastructure, actually put them there. You need MEP, some mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, civil planning. So you still need those folks to do that. So we've aligned ourselves with a company out of Cleveland, Ohio called Container Homes USA. It's a black-owned company. MBE, WBE, by a man and a woman who started a company over 10 years ago that got into manufacturing. So now we're using to expand their product throughout the U.S. and the Caribbean. They've aligned themselves for a very large manufacturer out of Dubai called Remittances. So if you ever get a chance to come over our plant, we got a 500,000 square foot plant. That's the manufacturing capabilities that we have to deliver projects not only in the U.S. but down through the Caribbean. So I'm going to go through this really quick, the type of system we have, because what's important is that people don't realize if I live in a hurricane zone, I live in Miami. If a hurricane actually comes through at a Cat 4, Cat 5, what's the recovery time? Right? So in South Florida, a lot of things are built out of CB, concrete block stucco. So now we're introducing a program around how items now are built out of steel. 100% steel. Impact windows, impact doors, meet the Miami Code designation. The reason we're doing it this way is because of the speed to market. We have a major affordable housing in South Florida, probably close to 300,000 units we call the Gold Coast. That's just a point from Palm Beach County down to Miami. That's not including what's going on in Fort Pierce or Orlando. So this framing system, and this is how we deliver it, this framing system is whether we do a level 1 type building or a level 5. We're doing a level 5 resort in St. Thomas off of something called Water Island. So this system, which I like, so this talks about why modular, speed to market, right? So we're not going to spend time there, run out of time. Design, not spend. So this is a framing system. So this is a structural markup of what it looks like. All steel. All light and heavy gauge make our units, and they sit on a spread footer. So when you look at it, this is a foundation that we do. Using less concrete, we actually set the foundation to be able to take our steel structure. So we designed the building right now. South Florida is going to be 4 stories high, 50 feet. Design everything, the hallways, the elevator. Now Otis is going to put the insert in, stairways, everything in that system designed. And we can go up to 15, 16 stories on it. But this is an example of the foundation that we put down for our unit. What's really important is this. So in very humid areas, you have issues with mold, and so people use gypsum board. Well, that's out the window for us. We use something called MgO. It's called magnesium oxide board. It's now accepted in the U.S. It's almost indestructible, that product that we put on the side of a wall, and it's mold resistant, really good. And so the units, and I'll just show you this really quick. This is a skid base. This is the floor. This is a ceiling structure. I'm going to go through it, and I'm going to tell you the similarities because they're exactly the same. This is a wall. And this is a wall. You can see it's all steel. The similarities are everything that we do. All foam encapsulated. Think about energy. So we had to do an independent utility study for the units that we're putting down in West Palm Beach, because when we got financing, it had to be affordable, and so the utility index is really important. So we got an independent firm. So for a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, and when they do the independent utility study, they go through how much does it cost to run a microwave, dishwasher, washer, dryer, you name it. So for a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, which is about almost 1,000 square feet, electricity bill, and I don't know the kilowatt hour rate here, but in Florida, utility bill for that unit in the dead of summer, hotter, about $130 a month. Now, in the winter months, it's much cheaper because you don't usually run your electric heat pump for it. So, but what I'm trying to reflect is that it's all light and heavy steel gauge, foam encapsulated with sound barriers. Everything that we build, every wall that goes in the unit, which is important, hurricane resistant. But people don't think about recovery time. Think about it like, am I going to get a hurricane? You don't think about if I do get a hurricane, how do I recover? So having a very strong structure really important around recovery time and some of the things we talked about earlier that if your hospital was to go out, that's really important. So what are some of the applications? We can do all types of external EFIS. So let's talk about the opportunity for Saint Kitts and Nevis. I peppered a bunch of questions up here around is it right or is it not right? So the question is, does your country want to be an order taker or order maker? You want to consider goods or do you want to produce goods? So the question is, if you want to produce goods, what's your sweet spot? Tourism is a sweet spot. Beautiful beaches, absolutely. Can a sweet spot be manufacturing for this island? It's a small island, 51,000 people or so, but it doesn't take a lot of people to run a plant. Built a plant. The plant is not for the consumption on the island. The plant is not only for the consumption on the island, but also the distribution across the islands that I'm showing here. What do you need? Port. You got a port. So what I like about it is the close proximity, some of the islands to Saint Kitts and Nevis that you could potentially service if you went down this route. I'm only giving you a potential solution. There's a lot of work that got to be done around economically if it actually work or not. I already know the labor rates. So I know that's going to work, sure. The question is there demand to make it happen? So do you have the same level of demand for housing, multifamily, resorts, name it? So what I like about St. Kitts is kind of its proximity, especially those countries that are under the same currency that you all use here. I think they become great trading partners with you. This is just to show some completed projects we got. Well, actually, this is a new project, not completed. It's going up right now. This is 4 stories. These are made out of steel containers. You wouldn't even know it, right? Got a double staircase, one in the front with an elevator bank and one in the back. This is the actual site plan that's been designed by our architects to do it. We got 3 units. It was a tight site plan that we had actually did for that. Impact windows, impact doors, certified for Miami-Dade code. That's really important. These storms are getting more and more vicious. And energy efficient, and I like to say impact resistant, but it's up to a certain code, which is 180 mile an hour wind codes that you have. These are some that our manufacturer did. So someone mentioned Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia has the largest construction project going on in the world. It's called NEOM. Chance Google. So our manufacturer supplied square feet housing just for the workers. It's the largest construction project going on in the world right now under the Crown Prince called NEOM. Google it. It's important to understand. I'm out of time. Maybe I am out of time. So in conclusion, I really appreciate the opportunity to come up today. And what I would ask is that I'm not here to say, well, you should use steel manufactured homes on the islands of Nevis and St. Kitts. What you should say, should I use steel manufactured homes on the islands of Nevis and St. Kitts? And by the way, I don't want to be an order taker, I want to be an order maker. Is there an opportunity to expand that type of industry and place it here on the island to supply other islands that may not be able to make that investment for the benefit of everyone? So just something to think about that I think would be great for everyone to ponder. That's all I have. Thank you.
Let's give them a round of applause for tremendous presentations. And I think you would have a lot of questions, but I have to check on the timing. How much time do we have left? 0? All right. So I guess what I'll have to do is, did I see him? Larry? Vaughan? Okay. He had the email address as he was directing you. Send all your questions in, because there's a wealth of information that you just received. And I know you would have many questions with respect to all this presentation. So it was really a great pleasure to be here with you guys, and for all the information that these gentlemen brought to you. I know you will benefit greatly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let us put our hands together for this excellent panel. I think that if we leave, or when we leave this conference, and we find that we have gained weight, it is because of much food for thought that we have received from the panels thus far. And I believe that the only way we can balance that off is with action through exercise of what we have learned. That's so, Doctor. Wonderful. And so I want to say thank you once again, but the person who will do the formal thank you for me would be High Commissioner Mr. Samuel Berridge, who will, no, he did it already. It will be His Excellency Mr. Calvin St. Just. Yes, you are so far away. I almost had to send another plane ticket for you. All right, so let us get while he's coming, let us get our devices, because we're going to go into our third Menti session. And if I can have the names up here for the thank yous, I want to begin with the first gift. Any photographers? No photographers? Oh. And I want to begin with thanking Mr. Dave Browne for being the moderator for the session. And so, thank you. I then want to call Mr. Colin Cannonier, who gave an excellent presentation on food security. Dr. Cannonier, if I please. And then I call upon Dr. Lionel Rollins for his presentation on national security, which undergirds all of our technologies, all our advancements in sustainability. Dr. Rollins, let's put our hands together. Then Dr. Baker, thank you very much for that presentation on tourism. And by no means least, Mr. Byron Jones, our presenter on manufacturing. And seeing that our devices are in our hands and we are ready to take part in the final survey for the day. I see some people have started already. The first question is, Oh, the code. Oh, yes, it was up already. Could we put the code back up, please? It is 2938. I repeat, 2938-0742. 2938-0742. Are we ready to go? Wonderful. The first question. What is the best medium do you think the diaspora can use to create sustainability in Saint Kitts and Nevis? I repeat, what is the best medium the diaspora can use to create sustainability in Saint Kitts and Nevis? I'm expecting to see, okay, so the voting is happening. And we have providing crime mitigation and border security assistance, food production increase for local supply and trade, destination promotion of Saint Kitts and Nevis in the diaspora, and that has 6 now votes. Increased manufacturing diversity and capacity. How do we make sure we are creating sustainability? And it looks like food production leading the way there. We go to our second question. How do you envision access to food production and manufacturing can be increased and or diversified both at home and in the diaspora? So what we're asking here, how do you think that our nationals, both at home and in the diaspora, can get involved in increased food production and manufacturing that can benefit both Saint Kitts and Nevis, nationals at home and nationals in the diaspora? How can we collaborate across the borders on food production and manufacturing? So we are saying that farming and processing systems, both at home and abroad, can we get into farming in those outside lands as well and process by greater manufacturing means and send home? Can we use the use of technology to overcome diseconomies of scale here in Saint Kitts and Nevis? Can we have deeper trading arrangements in agriculture and manufactured goods in the countries where we have our diaspora? Or number 4, can we reduce the supply costs to make the production of food and basic goods more affordable? What do you think is the best way you'd envision that access can be done? Then we go to question number 3. How would you rank the priorities of the work of the Regional Integration and Diaspora Unit on ensuring that we create the sustainable island state? How would you rank the work? Do you think we should start with which one, then the second, the third, in whatever order you please? And let's look at it for food production, food security and nutrition, national security and border protection, manufacturing and trade, or hospitality services. How would you rank those 4 in order for the work that we do? And finally, what policy would you want to see created, or what would you want to contribute to achieve sustainability? So if you had an action plan that you would want to contribute to, what would you? And so the first one is sustainable tourism policy. Would you want to be a part of helping to shape the sustainable tourism policy? Or a food security policy, a manufacturing and trade policy, environmental policy, or border security policy? How would you want to contribute through your work in diaspora? And it appears that we really want to feed ourselves well. So I'm seeing the food security taking that lead there, followed very closely by manufacturing and trade. Maybe manufacturing the very same food that will be in the food policy. So Thank you very much, my friends. We have come to the end of day one, and a few housekeeping matters. We begin tomorrow in earnest at 8:30. 8:30 tomorrow. The 10 o'clock start this morning was not the regular scheduled start. We were just facilitating the wreath laying ceremony with with the National Heroes Day. And we would not have wanted to compete with a national event, and so we started later. So we begin in earnest tomorrow because by 11:30 tomorrow, we need to be finished. And we will commute to Nevis for lunch with the Honorable Premier tomorrow. And so we need to finish on time to get ourselves to Nevis because we won't want to keep the Honorable Premier waiting and wondering. And then after that, we will begin our first set of excursions, which will begin on Nevis. So pack your bags. If you are desirous of doing the catamaran and snorkeling, then bring your gear ready for that. Or if you want to do the historic tour of Nevis, be prepared for that tour as well. So those two activities are happening in the afternoon at about 2 o'clock, and then we journey our way back over. So let us prepare for quite an exciting second day when we'll be looking at more exciting topics of how we can help to build a sustainable island state through the work of the diaspora. So thank you very much. Have a restful good evening. Give yourselves a round of applause for a wonderful first day.